My biggest thing and my biggest word of advice is just don't lead alone. As educators, we feel like our problems are our problems, but little do we know that these are problems that are affecting others across the United States.
That is Dr. Amanda Austin, Louisiana's 2025 State Principal of the Year, school leader, and champion for purposeful, people-first leadership. She believes some of the most meaningful progress in education happens when leaders stop carrying challenges alone and start learning alongside others.
I had to be transparent and say, I don't know. What are we good at? What are we not good at? What do we need to fix?
By the end of this conversation, you'll learn how thoughtful, relationship-centered leadership can help a school grow with purpose. I'm Dr. Matthew Flippen, and this is Transformational Educators. I know you have a background and emphasis in your work on leadership rubrics, and that was part of your dissertation. I'd love for you to just touch on that briefly about what is that work, and then we can shift into like how you've applied that at your campuses.
I will say that I was an alternative certification educator. I graduated Louisiana State University with a degree in criminology and a minor in African American studies because I was going to be a lawyer. And then my last year of school, I took an education class, which led me to a school, Polk Elementary School, and a particular teacher, her name was Miss Coates, who let me teach her 5th grade math class. I would be remiss if I didn't say that my mother was she retired with 40 years in education. She was my 6th grade math teacher as well as the counselor, because whenever you're in the country, you do what you got to do. You do both. And so education had always been there, but it was through that experience at Polk Elementary that I was like, I think I want to be an educator. To obtain a lawyer is reactive. Something has happened and you have to obtain service. But to be an educator, I thought could be proactive, to put knowledge and skills into the hands of kids so that way, hopefully, they wouldn't need to obtain a lawyer later on in life. That's just my thought process. But I was alternative certification. I got my alternative certification from Louisiana College, which is actually Louisiana Christian University in Pineville, Louisiana. And so that foundation kind of led me into saying, well, if I'm going to do this and I don't have a formal undergraduate degree in education, then I needed to learn everything I needed to be successful for myself and for the kids that would be in front of me. And so after that, then whenever I finished my master's and I was like, well, again, let's just do it up. Let's just, go all the way to a doctorate. I really wanted to focus in on what effective habits and behaviors led principals to leading successful schools. And at that time, it was the Louisiana Compass rubric. And so I really studied it. What habits? There was one school actually in East Baton Rouge Parish that I conducted focus groups with the principal, all of his staff, as well as his admin team, because I wanted to know what was he doing that led a school from being almost an F to an A in about a 3 to 4 year period of time. What actions was he taking? And who could tell you that? His staff and his admin team. And so after conducting all those focus groups, I really learned what steps, what moves, and again, what actions that needed to be taken. And I wanted to embody those. At that time, I was still a teacher, but I knew where I wanted to go. And I knew in order for me to one day be a successful leader, that I needed to have a successful leader to kind of model my own actions from. And so that's kind of how I got started in the work of looking at the Louisiana leader evaluation system. Now, fast forward, maybe 15 years or so, the rubric has changed. And so now in Louisiana, we use a Louisiana Educator rubric, which is fashioned after NIET and some of their rubrics that they had used in their system for effective schools and effective leaders. And so I cross-reference both rubrics, the old and the new, because again, I wanted to make sure my own actions lined up with effective practices. And not only do I use the rubric, my assistant principal uses the rubric, my instructional coaches uses the rubric. And so in order for me to grow and build capacity in others, I really had to understand what I needed to do in order to model for them. Because I tell them all the time, one day I'm going to get old and it's going to be your turn to step up. And so I want to make sure that they have the tools and skills to be successful. And so this is my second time being a principal at a new school using the new rubric. And so it has really been a learning experience, but I'm doing it with a team, which makes the learning even more meaningful whenever you have others to collaborate with.
Yeah, so absolutely, collaboration is so key. So yeah, I love to hear about your the way you took a case study, dove into researching this particular transformative principle. So I will definitely circle back to you as we build out this transformational education leaders a master's program that we're working on, because it's meant to build those competencies over a 2-year period of time. So let's dive into like a case study example of your most recent campus. When you arrived, what was the data showing you about the campus? And maybe for our audience, give a little context. It's a pre-K through 12th grade. STEAM.
Yeah, MSA East, the Iberville Math Science and Arts Academy East. We are pre-K through 12. And so whenever I was assigned or reassigned to this school, I literally was like, but it's pre-K 12. My experience is I started off as an elementary school teacher. I taught 2nd through 5th grades. Then I moved into leadership, and I was at a 7th through 12th grade campus as an assistant principal. In my first principalship, I was a principal of a 6 through 12. So I've spent a lot of time in secondary at this point, more time than elementary. And so when I got to MSA East, or I literally remember my superintendent saying, "You've been reassigned and you're going to MSA East." And I was like, okay. And he was like, "It's a pre-K through 12. And I was like, pre-K through 12 in one building? Like you can go from playing, and foundational skills to launching a kid off into life in the span of one day." But when I got to school, they were an A. They were, I believe, a 96.1 when I got there. And so we do letter grades. And so to inherit a school that is already high, it was daunting. I was kind of like, okay, what am I supposed to do? Like maintain? But it's not just to maintain it, it's to grow the campus. And so a 96.1 looks great on a banner, on paper, on social media, but I really had to take a step back and work with the team at that time to figure out, let's break it down. What using the Louisiana accountability system, which has also changed recently for this upcoming school year. But at that time, using the old accountability system, I needed to see a breakdown. What does that mean for K through 8? What does that mean through 9 through 12? And then within that, there are silos within it. There is ACT and work keys. There's the LEAP test that we use as an indicator of readiness in a particular grade level. And then we also have DIBELS. Are my youngest learners ready to read and move forward? So we really had to take a step back and break down, what does a 96.1 mean? Because I'll say my elementary is stronger than my high school. But within that, elementary has work to do. There's some things that we could do to enhance elementary. And then on the high school side, it's a whole different approach. So we really had to take a step back when I got there. And I really I needed charts. Let's put it on posters. Let's put it on the board. I needed to visualize this pre-K through 12th grade campus and next steps on how we can enhance learning and to increase student opportunities and interest.
Hey, is today's conversation resonating with you? You know, the educators we feature on this podcast all have one thing in common. They're committed to growth, not just for their students, but for themselves. At Graceland University, we've built programs and partnerships that support that kind of growth. Servant leadership and school transformation for educators who want to make a lasting difference. If you're curious about what that could look like for you, scan the QR code or check out the link in the show notes. Let's get back to the conversation. Yeah, absolutely. And so you involved teachers in that. So you generated some charts and you said, hey, let's talk about this together. How did you involve them specifically? Did you have a big workshop? What did that look like?
Well, I'll say when I first got there, the first thing, I had to get to know them and they had to get to know me. They had a school leader there for years prior to me. And so I'm coming in and they're looking at me like, what are you about to change on this campus? And so one, I had to build rapport. One of the first things I did was kind of gather some qualitative data about feelings, perceptions about their school, about themselves. And so I scheduled these 30-minute visits. I literally got to the school in July. And we had those 30-minute visits in July. And it was just a Google form and it was optional. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see the school? What do you want for yourself? What do you want for the school? Like, these are the kind of questions that I asked them. And so I collected that qualitative data about the feelings and perceptions of the faculty and staff before I even could dig into numbers. Like, they weren't going to listen to anything about numbers from me until I learned who they were. And so after that, it literally has been a 3-year process because I've been at MSA East for 3 years. I love just my team makes fun of me. I love just a good old Word doc with charts. Like, I can make a chart out of anything. My team is like, no, we need Excel or we need sheets that can calculate formulas and that could do, and I'm like, I don't know how to do all that. I could do very basic level. It makes me think of coding. But what we started doing my first year is we started making an Excel sheet where it was just individual teacher data for this year, for the 25-26 school year, for the students you have in your classroom. Let's look at their historical data. And so I could sit here and break all that down, and I have it broken down and pass it off. But it's more meaningful when teachers look at their individual kids to see where are they even starting with in order to form a goal. And so after the teachers kind of grappled with data, and this wasn't a one-time sitting, this was a couple of our PLCs or clusters where teachers were digging into data, looking at paper spreadsheets and putting it into a Google Sheet. And then, of course, technology in a Google Sheet was its own barrier. But now we're at a place where year 3, not only are we still tracking our individual students' historical data, we're forming goals. We have another tab for RTI tracking where kids are going to be. We have aligned it to our SAT, student assistance team, and MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support. Like, we have all these connections that we're making that when you say, Bobby's struggling, show me the charts and graphs that show me that Bobby's struggling during your RTI period, and it graphs it for them. And so I'm now just copying and pasting this graph into our SAT, our MTSS process to determine if a 504 plan or if SPED accommodations may be needed. And so it has grown in such a way, and our teachers are embracing it. And then, in our heads, we're kind of like, we don't want to add more to it, but we're like, it took 3 years to get here, but it's such a powerful tool. And it's an expectation. The teachers know they're going to get a spreadsheet. They know that we all have shared access. We're going to check it to make sure that it's ongoing. It's not just a August, September thing, but we're in February. And so we're heading towards state testing. And are we tracking progress toward a goal between the teacher and the student that they both collectively have set? So that's how we got them involved, but it took time.
It sounds intense and intentional, and I think that's a great lesson. Was there something early that you identified in that you can share as an example that was either a specific child was missing, or it was a content or a focus area that was missing that this process identified?
Well, I think the biggest thing was, are we working individually, or is there a school-wide initiative that we could work on that everybody can buy into? And so, of course, for me, just having certain experiences, I was like, well, we, even as early as kindergarten, first grade, we still have to learn how to write. There's this huge disconnect from second to third in Louisiana, from non-testing to tested. And then we also have where if our students are not proficient at the end of third grade, they could possibly be retained for their literacy, for DIBELS. And so we wanted to look at reading, writing, and speaking kind of as a hub to say if our kids are ready and prepared, then they will be successful. And so we just kind of looked at maybe a writing strategy that we as a school can collectively work on, that when I say race or when I say CER, claim, evidence, and reasoning, It doesn't matter if you're in third grade or if you're in 12th grade, you know what that stands for, and you know how to pull a claim, evidence, and reasoning from a passage and a strategy that kids can write on. And so even if I wanted to, kind of go from ELA to social studies, there's still a connection that can be made. And if we're having mixed PLCs between elementary, middle, and high school ELA teachers, they're still speaking the same language. And that was really important to me because, again, having a wide variety of teachers, I didn't want to get overwhelmed. I don't want them to feel overwhelmed. So I kind of wanted to just pick a single focus that we could work on collectively. And of course, 12th grade writing should look way different than third grade writing. But how powerful is it for that third grade teacher and those high school teachers to be in the same room to talk about, if this foundation is in place, then kids will be successful, at the end, which is all of our ultimate goal, is for our kids to be successful beyond high school. So that vertical alignment has been really powerful, and it can be, but we got to be strategic.
Totally respect the decision to focus on something that went across grades and allowed teachers a common language. I mean, language is so important, and this idea of being able to focus on a theme that you can carry year over year, and it's not just a feel good theme. It's a theme related to a real specific skill set that is a predictor of success. So outstanding. I mean, I think that is great. Now, have you maintained that over the 3 years, or have you advanced now to another theme?
No, we're still building. Personally, as a leader, I always am like, what's next? Let's move on. Let's jump. But even from like district leadership, it's kind of like, don't feel like you have to move on to something else. But I hate to say perfect, because I don't know if there's a such thing as perfection, but work on and improve what you're doing now so you can continue to see results. The last thing I want us to do is to spend this time in writing, and then we move on to something else, and then we forget about writing. And so I don't know if we're ready yet. And I don't know what the measurement is. Like, is it 100% proficiency in writing that I don't know what the magic number is, or if it is a magic number. But if we're seeing improvement, then I'm not ready to move on yet. I want to continue to see that upward trajectory.
That's great. Well, step up from a higher level standpoint and just talk to us a little bit about the leadership behaviors that you feel are important about getting alignment among a team like you have there.
Yeah. Well, I think definitely one is transparency. When I got there, again, having elementary knowledge as a teacher, having secondary admin experiences, there were some things I just didn't know, or like, tell me about this school, because every school has its own personality. My first principalship, I got the job 7 days before school started. My assistant principal didn't come until October. My instructional coach, she came on day 6 when I called her after I got the job. And I was like, hey, what are you doing next week? And she was like, going here. And I was like, well, how about you want to come here in this position? And she was like, yeah, hesitant, like, where I'm freaking out too. Like, we're about to start a whole school, just like new year, new school. And so she joined me. And then my counselor, he got the job, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks before I got there. He was hired by the previous principal. And so every school has its own personality. But at the end of the day, I have to make sure that the team is on board, that the team understands what the vision is. But that also means, as a leader, I have to figure out what the vision is. We can have collaborative conversations and refine it, but it's still my job as a leader to say, this is the direction that we're going to go in. And then I want them to pick holes. I want them to play devil's advocate and say, well, did you think about this? Can we, I told them, I don't want yes men on my admin team. And so that's something that was really of importance, is figuring out the personality of the school. Now, the school I'm at now, I had to do that same process with people. When I was reassigned, I came by myself. I was the only new person into an existing system. And so that was a little bit tougher. It's different when you have a team that's all on board, or you all are like, I think my first principalship, we were all like, we have no idea what we're doing, but we're going to do it together. the school I was reassigned to, I was like, I'm by myself and I don't know. And so I had to be transparent and say, I don't know. What are we good at? What are we not good at? What do we need to fix? We're fine. But I also had to be very intentional about my observations. Like I could hear the things, but I also need to see those same things or different things because I wanted to make the school my own. And I didn't just go off of what others had said. And so that was, it was different, but it stretched and grew me because I had to learn the behaviors of the current school. And I could sit here and be like, well, at my last school, that doesn't help anybody. So I had to adjust my own leadership practices to enhance the programming where I am currently at.
Yes. Yeah, totally. There's lots of scenarios where a new principal walks into a school, right? I mean, there's a whole leadership change, but normally it's not. Normally it is you are the new person in a building that's established. And if you're following a successful leader who has been loved and appreciated and done well, walking in humbly with curiosity and taking time to build relationships is a great way to go. Walking in and trying to, like you said, you were 96 rated. If you'd walked in and said, okay, here's all my great ideas on how we're going to get to 99, there may have been some resistance to that because you weren't known. And they may have known of your reputation, but they didn't know you and you didn't know them. I'm hearing consistently from leaders right now that this thing we say about children, that children don't care what you know till they know you care, is same for adults too. I think that's what you were communicating when you walked in as well. I need to get to know you as a staff and show you that I do care about you as people and that we're going to go on a journey together to continue the success and see how we can even improve it. I think you did share that you've continued to be A-rated, and so congratulations on that.
Thank you for that. That again is a daunting task. Whenever you have kids who are ready, at a place of ready to learn, ready to move, it's hard to grow kids who are high. But it's our task. We still have to. So we have to figure out what do we need to do and what steps we need to take. And so, even for teachers, that's something that they're like, well, I mean, they already, and I'm like, yes, but we have to push them. Just like if I have an effective teacher, I want to move them to be highly effective. I don't want them to just remain effective, which is great, but I want to grow and I want to stretch them. And so it's important that I model the behaviors with adults, with teachers, so teachers can then model that with the students in the classroom.
Absolutely. Is there a specific story or is there a specific teacher or a child that stands out that really connects to like your why that you're doing this work that you've experienced the last couple of years?
In administration, I never really had a leader that looked like me. I never had a Black female. And so when I became a principal, the first time, I had students who were like, oh, like you're our principal? And I was like, yeah. And they were like, we never had a Black principal. And this is like 2019. And so I'm like, really? And they're like, yeah. And so if I wore my hair curly, if I wore my hair in a puff, like they would notice those things. And they started to wear their hair and they started to imitate me. Or if we had a twin day at school on a dress up day, they wanted to look like, they were like, can we be your twin? And then, it might look like quadruplets, but they saw something that they had never seen before. And for me, I just was like, that's my why. I want to educate all children, regardless of race, color, creed, nationality. But for a child who's like, I've never seen anybody do what you're doing that looks like me with your curly hair, or whenever you go up to speak, or whenever you are on TV, or whatever you're doing, for them to be like, that's my principal, and their sense of pride, that's something that really touched my heart. Because I never thought of myself that way. I'm like, I'm doing this to make a better way for you guys for the future. But for them to give back to me by those kind words and gestures, that keeps me motivated.
Yes, that's incredible. Amanda, thanks for sharing that. My youngest sons were born in Ethiopia, so they're twins, and they're 18 now, and just outstanding young men. And it's definitely something I'm sensitive to. That I want them to have Black male role models that are in their lives that they can aspire to. And I know that you are in an elite group of doctorates in education, serving in the principal role as a Black female. And so there is a lot of pride that you should have in that accomplishment, and being recognized, at such a high level. So I definitely pray that your influence and voice continues to get a broader and broader audience. Well, there's so many aspects of what you're doing that are important. I mean, obviously, you're an incredibly gifted leader and a role model to your students and your community. So, just so exciting.
I appreciate it. No, I think at some point I really kind of looked at the intersectionality of being a Black or African American and a woman in leadership. And I mean, there's a lot, there's layers. At one point in time, it was age as well. And I don't think we talk about ageism. I was a young, quote unquote, I'm not anymore. I was a young school leader. And so at 29 years old, to talk to the veteran who's been in education for 40 years, and she's like, why would I listen to you? And so just, there's a lot of different challenges that could be in leadership. And so, again, the thing that the only thing or the first thing I knew how to do was just to build a relationship. She wasn't going to listen to me if I didn't know anything about her, if I didn't know her why, if I didn't know that she liked to garden on the weekends, or if she, if I'm going to bring you some tomatoes. Okay. Whatever it took for her to realize I was invested in her as a person. And even at 40 years, I wanted her to grow. Then she would have been resistant to anything I had to say. And so building those meaningful, authentic relationships, really in any aspect or any challenge that I may face, that's my first go-to.
Absolutely. So true. And right now there are a large number of young principals, because there's been a lot of turnover in principalships, a lot of young principals entering in. And I think that guidance and advice you just gave about start with relationships. Everything starts with relationships, and build from there. So critical. Well, where can our listeners learn more about your work and connect with you?
Well, definitely Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, LinkedIn, all those social media channels, on Instagram and Twitter, the @ Dr._Amanda Austin. I definitely try to keep up on social media because that's part of the world now. And leadership is like getting your voice out there and following other educators. I've made so many meaningful relationships with educators from social media. And so when I get to attend national conferences such as ASED or ISTE or the National Association of Secondary School Principals, and I get to see people who I follow, I feel like a fangirl, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's you. But we as educators have so many great things. LinkedIn, Dr. Amanda Austin, I would love to connect with others because education is not easy and leadership is an added layer that it can be difficult. But my biggest thing and my biggest word of advice is just don't lead alone. Don't do this by yourself. As educators, we feel like our problems are our problems, but little do we know that these are problems that are affecting others across the United States, if not nationally, but across the United States. And if we can work together to kind of have a think tank and brainstorm, then that saves a little bit more time. That saves you some headache. That saves you maybe some heartbreak because there's other educators who've been through it, who have advice to share, but we can't do it on our own. I would love to connect with others.
That's fantastic. Amanda, thank you for offering that. Well, to our listeners, if you found today's episode valuable, please share it with a colleague or educator who would benefit. And if you haven't already, please follow Transformational Educators so you never miss an episode. And until next time, keep leading with purpose and transforming schools into places where everyone thrives. If today's conversation gave you fresh insight or inspired you to lead with purpose, please follow the show and tell a friend. It helps us reach more educators who want to make a difference. For more stories, resources, and tools to support your leadership journey, visit graceland.edu. Until next time, keep leading with courage and care.